Okay, so today is the engine reinstall part one. So off camera, I received the new slave cylinder. It is slightly different than the part that came with my kit. I think the one that came with my kit might be a slightly updated part. So the part number on that is 94ZT-7A564-BB. The new part, the new part that I received from my dealer, um, ends in BA. So I think the one I had before is slightly newer, but it was broken. So this new part that I got in from my dealer, once I got it in, I filled the line in port and the bleed port with some brake fluid, threaded in the lines themselves, and then let sit on a paper towel to see if it would bleed. It didn't, so the next part I did was I took the lines off, bolted it to the bell housing, put the lines back in, uh, tightened them fairly decently, and left it overnight to see if that would bleed. It also didn't. I was little worried that it would because this new part, it came, so the line in came with a hard line, and the flare on that looks to be a bubble flare. The clutch line that I had with my kit, which I need to install onto the slave cylinder, has, I think, a double flare. Um, so I was worried that that would be a problem. Um, but my dealer suggested I try it out, and he said he thinks that there shouldn't be a problem. So and it in fact did not leak overnight. So I decided to mate the engine and transmission and then test it out while connected to the master cylinder, which is where this video starts. So I originally intended to do this job on my own, but the engine and the transmission mating proved pretty tricky uh, when it wasn't on a platform. Um, because the bell housing ends up a little bit lower than the engine has to be lifted in order to mate the bell housing to the engine. So for me, in this case, I had to have it a little bit dangling in the air from the engine lift, which meant sort of pushing the two together was pretty tricky as the engine would swing back and forth. And so I had my wife come in to help me with that bit, and then she ended up helping me for most of the rest of the session anyways. But once we got the splines matched up, I rebolted and retorqued the engine uh, to the bell housing. One thing to note that I realized after is I did not apply any spline grease to the clutch splines, and also my dealer also suggested that I should add a touch of spline grease to, I believe, the pilot bearing inside the at the like closest to the crankshaft. Um, I had totally forgot this during the session. I ended up not doing either of them. He says it's not imperative to do. It would have been good if I did it, so it was up to me if I wanted to pull the engine again and do it or not. At the time of this recording, I decided not to do it because it would just involve asking my wife to help again, and she's got her own stuff, and it would probably extend the rebuild by quite a few days. So I decided to skip it for now. Unfortunately, I should have remembered to do it, but I didn't. Anyways, back to this session. Um, Once we got the engine and transmission mated again, we lifted it up over the car and sort of got it roughly into a position where I could attach the banjo bolt on the clutch line to the master cylinder. And I bled the clutch cylinder or the clutch by hand because the pedal box has a plate right next to the bleed hole where I can reach my hand into it and bleed it. This time it bled fine. We bled it quite extensively to see if it would have the same problem. Um, Later at night, I also went back into the garage and then stepped on the pedal a few times with my leg to see if that would break anything, and thankfully it didn't. But for this session, I tried to bleed it. That went well, so went forward with continuing to mount the engine. So one thing that's tricky with this, mounting the engine actually went really easily. I got it to the place where I could attach the mounting bracket and mount it to the chassis much easier than the very first time since I have some experience now. But the problem with this time is that the prop shaft is already in the transmission tunnel, and the rear of it was bolted to the diff. And so, in order to get this to mate, I would have to basically unplug the back of the transmission and slot the prop shaft into the transmission and then sort of lower the engine into the mounting spot. Unfortunately for me, my splines were not lined up properly because of the fact that I had unmounted and remounted the prop shaft from the diff uh, a couple of times in preparation for this engine install. So when I popped off the plug at the back of the transmission was tilted a little bit, and all the oil came dumping out. And I was able to get the prop shaft yoke into the transmission, but the splines were not matched up, so it wouldn't go all the way in. So unfortunately, I lost almost all of the oil. So I plugged it back up, and I thought, let me try to just mount the engine. I'll leave the prop shaft sort of on the side. And when I mount the engine, I wanted to see whether I could loosen the transmission oil fill bolt. And the idea was that if I could, then I would just drain the rest of the oil from the transmission and mount the mate the transmission and prop shaft sort of at my leisure. And then once that's done, I can fill the transmission oil through the fill hole. The rest of the session was I just mounted the engine, sort of roughly tightened the bolts where they needed to be, and then I checked to see if I could remove that bolt. And indeed, I could. You just use a 9/16 wrench on the driver's side, sort of right where the footwell is. If you're under the car, you can see it. It's the square plug. You just loosen it. You can do it completely from under the car. It's a little bit tight to sort of remove the bolt and then sort of align the bolt back to like thread it back in, but it's doable. And I think I can just feed it some flexible hold and fill it with oil. So um, that was the end of this session. But the plan for next session is to drain the oil, mate the prop shaft to the transmission, and then basically start putting the car back together.